Alright, let's talk about 219 pages, one sitting head of state, and a podcaster who called his wife a man. By the time we're done here, you're going to know exactly how Emmanuel Macron is leveraging a Delaware courtroom to absolutely torch Candace Owens' reputation, and probably her bank account right along with it. This isn't just another political spat, it's a meticulously crafted legal strategy that could set a new precedent for how public figures fight back against viral misinformation. It's a masterclass in using the very system Owens often critiques to turn the tables, and honestly, it's fascinating to watch unfold. So, what actually lit this fuse? Here's the one-sentence timeline that kicked it all off. Back in December, Candace Owens dropped a two-part podcast, provocatively titled, Becoming Brigitte. In it, she made some truly outlandish claims. That France's First Lady, Brigitte Macron, was born male, had forged official documents, and had groomed a minor. Think about that for a second. These aren't just whispers, these are direct, verifiable accusations of identity fraud and serious criminal behavior. Within days, something almost unheard of happened. The Élysée Palace, the official residence of the French president, did something most world leaders would never dare. They sued an American commentator in a US federal court. That move alone signals the sheer gravity with which the Macrons are taking these accusations. The complaint itself is public, a massive document laying out their case, but I guarantee you, nobody on YouTube has truly walked you through the intricate, almost surgical trap the Macrons have laid within those pages, until right now. It's not just a lawsuit, it's a strategic dismantling of a narrative, piece by painful piece. Now you might be asking why Delaware? And that, my friends, is where the genius of Macron's legal team really shines. He picked Delaware for a reason. A very specific and very strategic reason. It just so happens to be the corporate home for Candace Owens LLC, meaning jurisdiction for the lawsuit is automatic. No messy arguments about where the case should be heard, it's a slam dunk. But here's the kicker. Delaware juries are notoriously unsympathetic to tabloid-style smears, especially when they target private citizens. And here's another crucial detail. Brigitte Macron, under US law, is not an elected official. She's considered a private figure. Why does that matter so much? Because it dramatically lowers the legal bar for proving defamation. Instead of having to prove actual malice, meaning Owens knew the statements were false or acted with reckless disregard for the truth, which is incredibly difficult to demonstrate, the Macrons only have to prove simple negligence. That one procedural detail, this seemingly minor shift in legal definition, essentially triples Owens' exposure. It means the Macrons just have to show that Owens didn't act with reasonable care, that she was careless in her fact-checking or reporting. It's a game changer, turning an uphill battle into a much more navigable path for the plaintiffs. The Macrons' legal team didn't just throw one punch. They delivered a sophisticated, three-pronged attack. The suit bundles three distinct legal claims that, like perfectly interlocking Lego bricks, build on each other to create an almost unassailable case. First up, and most straightforward, is defamation. This is the classic accusation. The statements Owens made are demonstrably false. The Macrons are asserting that Owens presented claims about Brigitte's gender and identity as verifiable facts, not opinions, and that these claims are simply untrue. Second, and a bit more nuanced, is defamation by implication. This is where the legal team gets really clever. Even if you try to couch your statements with phrases like, some people say, or I'm just asking questions, the law understands that you, the publisher, are still responsible for the implied defamatory meaning. You can't hide behind rhetorical gymnastics when you're actively disseminating a harmful narrative. The implication here is that Owens, by repeatedly raising these questions and presenting them as legitimate inquiries, was implicitly endorsing the truth of the underlying false claims. And third, the Macrons are alleging intentional infliction of emotional distress, IIED. This is an old-school tort, a legal claim that's been around for ages, but it's incredibly powerful here. To prove IIED, the plaintiffs must show that Owens' conduct was extreme and outrageous, that it intentionally or recklessly caused Brigitte Macron severe emotional distress. If they can make that stick, it opens the door wide open for punitive damages. Damages designed to punish the defendant and deter similar behavior in the future, not just compensate for harm. Think of it this way, if the jury buys that first brick, that Owens' statements were false and defamatory, then the next two claims, defamation by implication and IIED, often topple right into place automatically, compounding the potential liability. This is where the case gets truly brutal for Owens. Pages 37 through 59 of the complaint aren't just legal jargon, they are a meticulously compiled timeline of every single instance where Candace Owens was sent contrary evidence, direct, undeniable proof that her claims were false, and yet, she kept broadcasting. We're talking about birth records, authenticated family photos, sworn affidavits from individuals connected to Brigitte Macron's past, all directly refuting Owens's narrative. The Macron's legal team didn't just allege falsehoods, they showed that Owens was aware of these refutations. Paragraph 118 in particular is a devastating blow. It specifically details an email from a French journalist who, acting responsibly, warned Owens that her claim was une croyance conspirationniste sans fondement, a baseless conspiracy theory. The timestamp on that email, just 2 days before Owens doubled down on her claims on Instagram, that single paragraph, that undeniable proof of prior warning and subsequent disregard, is the smoking gun evidence of reckless disregard the Macrons need to solidify their case, even if they only needed to prove negligence. It speaks volumes about the defendant's state of mind. Owens' likely defense, and one she's already hinted at, is the classic, "I'm just asking questions" shield. She'll try to frame her podcast as commentary, as a legitimate inquiry into a public rumor, but the Macrons are ready for that. They've hired a media ethics professor whose expert testimony is prominently featured in the exhibit list. This expert will detail precisely what constitutes legitimate journalism, calling sources, requesting official documents, and crucially, printing denials or corrections when presented with them. The expert will testify that Owens did precisely none of those things. Instead, she stitched together Reddit memes, unverified rumors, and baseless accusations into a narrative, then monetized it by selling ads against it. Her conduct, the expert will argue, falls far below any accepted industry standard for ethical media practice. Jurors, bless their hearts, love clear, black and white rules, and this expert will provide them with an unequivocal standard against which to measure Owens's actions. It's a direct challenge to the notion that simply asking questions absolves one of responsibility for the answers they implicitly promote. Now let's talk money, because this is where things get really serious for Candace Owens. French law, by and large, tends to let public figures collect what are often symbolic damages in defamation cases. It's more about vindication than massive payouts. But US law? US law lets juries go wild. They can award significant sums. The Macrons don't have to prove reputational harm in France, they only need to prove it within the United States, where Owens's podcast reached a substantial audience. So, they're seeking both compensatory damages, to make up for the actual harm to Brigitte Macron's reputation and emotional well-being, plus punitive damages. And Delaware, while a corporate haven, also has some teeth when it comes to punitive awards. It caps punitives at the greater of treble compensatories, 3 times the compensatory damages, or $250,000 per claim. Multiply that by the 3 claims the Macrons are pursuing, then add in the considerable attorney's fees, and Owens is suddenly staring down the barrel of a mid-7-figure judgment if she loses. We're talking millions, not just thousands. It's a financial nightmare that could genuinely impact her ability to operate. So, what's Owens' likely defense strategy? She'll almost certainly try to wrap herself in the First Amendment, arguing, "I'm a commentator, not a reporter." She'll lean heavily on the New York Times v. Sullivan standard, which provides robust protection for speech about public figures, requiring proof of actual malice. Her argument will be that her podcast constituted opinion, rhetorical hyperbole, or protected commentary, and therefore cannot be defamatory. But the Macrons are ready for this too. They'll counter with great force that the podcast didn't present mere opinions. It presented assertions of verifiable fact, claims of gender reassignment, document fraud, and child grooming. These aren't abstract ideas. These are specific, actionable allegations that can be proven true or false. This battle will likely play out in dueling motions for summary judgment, where each side argues that the facts are so clear-cut that a trial isn't even necessary. Whichever side successfully frames that crucial distinction, first opinion versus verifiable fact, usually gains a significant advantage, often determining the outcome before a single juror is even sworn in. You might wonder, why would a sitting head of state risk filing such a high-profile lawsuit? Doesn't filing it just amplify the rumor, at least initially? It's a valid question, but the Macrons clearly weighed the PR calculus and decided it was worth the risk. They had 2 very compelling reasons. 1, Emmanuel Macron faces upcoming EU elections. Protecting his wife, his family, and signaling that he won't tolerate baseless attacks is a powerful message to his constituents and to the global stage. It's a demonstration of strength and personal integrity. 2. The much-vaunted Streisand effect, where attempts to suppress information inadvertently draw more attention to it, is, frankly, often overrated. Data suggests that once mainstream coverage shifted from Brigitte Macron is a man to Macron fights back in court, search volume for the original conspiracy theory actually collapsed. The lawsuit starved the story of oxygen, replacing salacious, attention-grabbing headlines with the much more boring, but ultimately more effective, legal procedure. It pivoted the narrative from gossip to accountability, and in doing so, effectively defanged the conspiracy. Now, if you're a small channel, creating content, don't panic. This ruling, or eventual ruling, isn't going to outlaw your hot takes or your strong opinions. That's not what this is about. But if you're a creator who monetizes outrage, who builds a brand on spreading debunked claims and consistently ignores corrections, then you are officially on notice. Delaware courts, and increasingly others, view repeated debunked claims as compelling evidence of malice, that you knew what you were saying was false, or you didn't care if it was. Let me translate that for you. If you're making money off a lie, especially after the rebuttal hits your inbox or your DMs, you are quite literally gambling your house, your livelihood, and your future on a jury pool you cannot control and cannot move. The legal system is slow, but it has a long memory, and it will eventually catch up. This case is a stark reminder that while the internet allows for rapid dissemination of information, it doesn't absolve you of the responsibility for its veracity. If these deep dives into courtroom drama and their impact on the creator economy help you navigate this wild digital world, then do yourself a favor, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. You won't want to miss our next breakdown. So, what's next for Candace Owens in this legal saga? Discovery starts in October, and this is where the real fun begins for the Macron's legal team, and the real pain for Owens. She will be compelled to hand over everything. Internal emails discussing the podcast, ad revenue spreadsheets showing exactly how much money she made from these claims, and any private chats or messages where she might have admitted doubts about the veracity of her statements. Imagine the Macron's lawyers meticulously sifting through every digital crumb. Then comes the deposition. Owens will be deposed, likely for 7 grueling hours under oath, answering questions about her research, her sources, and her intent. One awkward, "Yes, I knew it might be false," or "I didn't bother to check," could be absolutely devastating. That single admission, that moment of truth, could make punitive damages almost automatic. History shows that settlement odds spike dramatically right after these kinds of depositions. Why? Because that's when both sides truly understand the strength or weakness of their case. In fact, a staggering 85% of defamation cases that reach this critical stage end up settling before ever seeing a trial. The Macrons aren't just defending their dignity or Brigitte's honor here. They are road-testing a powerful new playbook. This is a strategy that any private figure, fed up with the relentless onslaught of viral lies in the digital age, can potentially clone. The blueprint is clear. Pick a friendly U.S. jurisdiction, like Delaware, where corporate ties make jurisdiction easy, and juries are sympathetic to private citizens. Sue for the lower negligence standard, which is far easier to prove than actual malice. And then, most devastatingly, bury the defendant in their own contradictory emails, their own financial records, and their own admissions during discovery. Candace Owens still has her platform, for now, but that 219-page complaint isn't just a legal document. It's a flashing, undeniable warning sign to every creator out there. Ignore the facts, ignore the corrections, monetize the lies, and Delaware might just let France finish what the algorithm started.